Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. Join us on the journey to financial success. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to the Ideal Investor Show. Today I want to bring something to your attention and kind of end in a way with a question. I discussed this on our Substack channel last week, and I'm sure you're very aware that in the last few weeks, if you look on a weekly level, but even if you look at last few months, or you could call it this season, this so-called hurricane season, there were quite a few big storms, and there might even be a threat of more to come. And two of these storms, Helene and Milton, both went into Florida, and then Helene went into other states as well, and Milton luckily just went across Florida and then into the ocean and dissipated. But both of them created a lot of damage, and you probably have seen in the social media and in the news and so forth some pictures of that damage. One of the things that happens is all those businesses that have to close, all those kind of things that were regular daily life ongoing, come to a stop when a hurricane hits, come again to a stop when there's another hurricane just a few weeks later. And then when you see all that damage, it takes time to clean up the mess, see what is still usable, and then start planning on how to actually rebuild and renew what was damaged. And when we look at this from a real estate perspective, there are a few things to contemplate. Number one, what is the economic impact of this renewal? And I did a little bit of research. I know this is maybe not a topic that most people are immediately interested in, but I thought it was quite interesting to see that overall, the economic impact of a storm is initially, for a lot of people losing their jobs, businesses being out of business, economic activity to come to a halt or go backwards for a certain area or for a state. And ultimately, the activity and the funding provided to rebuild is making up for that loss. So the loss of economic activity is something for 6 to 12 months. And then you basically have the gain on the other end when all that additional funding, all that additional activity comes in to rebuild. Now, one of the things in the context of real estate, especially for Florida, that is very interesting and important for anybody who is or plans to invest in Florida, is that it has gotten more and more challenging to get insurance. So one of the really things that we don't know yet, because these storms are relatively new, is how many of the people that got really massively affected, their roof got blown off or maybe their whole house got destroyed, how many of those were not insured because over the last few years, insurance has gotten so expensive that people just couldn't afford it anymore. Because that will have a direct impact on this renewal effort. Because if you have a house that got destroyed by a hurricane and it wasn't insured, where's the money supposed to come from to build a new one? Now, the hope could be that the government, state or federal government, comes out with programs for people to get lending or credit or something to rebuild their houses. Still, if you had a paid-off house or almost paid-off house and now you get a new house, that new house is definitely going to be more expensive because it will have to adhere to all the modern standards. And for some strange reason, I don't know how Mother Nature knows, but when you see oftentimes the pictures of devastation, there are like older houses, mobile home parks and stuff like that. And to some extent it makes sense because these are much, much weaker. And with strong winds and strong water, they are the most vulnerable. And so they get damaged the most. On the other hand, that also means most people that live in these kind of structures have them either paid off or they live for rent or stuff like that. They're not typically the people who could easily get a new house built and then take that new house on a mortgage and pay probably several $1,000s a month to pay back that mortgage, even if it's supported by the government. So there is a little bit of a caveat, but generally, what can be a little bit of hope, a little bit of an optimistic outlook, is that the real estate that got damaged through these storms is going to be replaced by modern real estate that meets modern hurricane and storm standards and is very unlikely to be anything equally damaged ever again. Because the new building standards are out there and they can create nowadays with modern building standards houses that can withstand the storms that we have seen in the media, and even stronger ones. So it is definitely technologically possible, but it also costs extra money, right? So you can't just say, okay, I had a mobile home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and now I want to get a new house, and the price is going to be anywhere nearly the same. You probably have to assume 2 or 3 times as expensive. So this renewal process fundamentally has some good aspects to it. The question is, will we be able to organize it properly? If the answer to that question is yes, then there's a bright future for all those devastated areas. If the answer is no, it will really be interesting what is going to happen to those people, to those families that were affected. So obviously we are very close to just having gone through those storms, so the answers are not necessarily on the table yet, but there is at least a hope that with the renewal, each time the storm goes through, less and less damage can be caused because everything that got renewed is now much more able to withstand the power and the impact of the storms. And maybe there is a future where you can say, yes, Florida has hurricanes, but everything is by now renewed to an extent where these hurricanes have minimal damage. That's my hope, and I wanted to end on this kind of positive note. I don't know how realistic it is that all this works out this way, but there is definitely the opportunity because people want to live there. It's a really nice state, and it is possible to live there safely. So stay safe, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.